Good evening, everybody. I think we have Arnie on the line.
And we will mic Arnie up and talk about gambling and sports. Arnie, it's Bob and Tony here. How are you tonight, Arnie?
Hi, Arnie.
Great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Our honor. Thanks very much.
It's our pleasure. And let me give some background for our viewers at home. Again, like I said before, Arnie is a certified compulsive gambling counselor. And if you go to the website, you can find out more about his bio. Executive Director of the Council on Compulsive Gambling of New Jersey for 8 years. Has appeared on many top TV shows, Oprah, 48 Hours, Nightline, just to name a few. Also done training work for the NFL and has done Fortune 500 work. And again, we can go on and on. Go to the website, aswexler.com. Also has a book called All Bets Are Off, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But again, Arnie, thanks for taking the time out tonight and joining us. And like we always like to start out with our guest, Arnie, tell us about yourself. Way back in the day, about you growing up and how you actually developed an interest in sports before you got to the gambling thing.
Well, I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I lived in Brooklyn. And I was shooting marbles, pitching pennies, and playing pinball machines. Mm-hmm. And at 14, I went to the racetrack for the first time, and I thought I found heaven. I was making 50 cents an hour after school. And I ended up walking out of the racetrack with $54, and I thought I could be a millionaire from gambling.
And as far as you going into it as a career, Arnie, how about like your training and your college? How did that all come about?
Well, I never went to college. I got out of high school at 3.5 years.
Okay.
And I thought that I could make money from gambling, so I thought it would be silly to go to college. Mm. And at 17, I was already stealing to support my gambling addiction. Wow.
So Arnie has been in the trenches, Tony, as far as that, and has gone on to help people because of it. But it's a fascinating story, and such. We can go so many areas with it. But Tony, questions for Arnie?
And Arnie, it's good evening. It's a pleasure to have you. Thanks for being here.
Oh, it's great for you letting me come on. Thank you.
Well, and I want to get to a second to the mind of the gambler. You know, Michael Dante, our actor friend, a good friend of this show, said he once saw Telly Savalas taking action on cockroaches crawling up a wall. There's the guy in the Twilight Zone with the slot machine who swore off of gambling, but yet he ended up toppling out of the window with the slot machine on the ground. And I guess I want to ask you, are problem gamblers born, or are they made?
I think we're born. I think the idea that there's some kind of deficiency in the brain of a gambler than normal people. A normal person can go in and gamble. They know when to stop. They can stop. The compulsive gambler believes that the gambling is going to make them rich and famous, and they just keep going until they destroy their life.
It's such a shame. And as far as you yourself, now, you had started on this path of, the racetrack as a kid. How did it progress through your young adulthood, your relationships? And when did you realize you had a problem? What did that problem do to you? And how do you now help others?
Well, that's an interesting question. Like I said, I started gambling at 7 or 8. At 14, it was racetracks. At 17, it was stealing to support my gambling addiction. I was working in the garment center and stealing by age 15 or 16. I was taking graft from customers as I was a plant manager. I did everything and anything to support my gambling addiction. Nothing came before the gambling. I went out with 2 girls before I met my wife, took them both to the racetrack, lost both times, and I figured out that girls were bad luck. Our first date with my wife was a movie, and then the next couple of 100 dates were Las Vegas nights in Brooklyn and Queens and in New York City, racetracks and sporting events I had a bet on. And then we got married. We went to Bermuda. I wanted to go to Las Vegas, but she already knew I had a problem before I had a problem. Actually, our second date was Monticello Racetrack. She was wearing pigtails, and the guy at the door said, "You're too young, you can't come in." And I was ready to leave her in the car while I go in and gamble, but the next gate let her in.
So you describe it like it's this gripping force that you've got to go back to it. It's
100%.
wow.
No matter what a gambler does, if they take a big loss or they take a big hit, they have this dream that tomorrow's going to be the day that's going to be magic, where they walk into the racetrack and they take home everybody's money. The next day, they're going to call the bookmaker and bet 23 games and go 23-0 wins. You know, that's the mind of the gambler. But it's really interesting. You know, you say, are you born or you create this problem? You know, today, Parkinson's meds, restless legs medicine are creating people that are becoming compulsive gamblers. So it's affecting a certain part of the brain that connects to the gambling addiction piece. And you would think there would be some research to figure out what's really going on.
Guess Big Brother ain't telling us that one. Wow.
Yeah, that's true. And,
Well, if you look up Parkinson's meds or restless legs or Abilify, you'll see a lot of articles about compulsive gambling addiction. And people that never gambled before all of a sudden get on these meds and they become compulsive gamblers.
Arnie, are there personality traits in young people that you could pick out that may cause them to possibly have a predisposition to compulsive gambling?
I don't think that's really a true fact. I'm not sure that that's the case. I mean, I've dealt with Chef Forte over the years. I testified for him in court. I dealt with Art Schlichter in the National Football League over the years. I've had Major League Baseball players and NBA players come to me for help over the years. But there's no real telltale sign that I think that you could figure out, hey, this guy's going to be a compulsive gambler, or this woman.
Yeah. And I know,
Yeah, for
Tony,
certain.
You wanted to bring up Schlichter in a second. And a couple
I mean, you guys read about Fred Carton recently.
Oh,
Yeah.
We will talk about him also, but one more before we get to the individual cases, Arnie. I mean, we talk about alcohol addiction, gambling addiction. Are the two very close? For example, Arnie, I mean, some people can bring $20 to the track and stop, and some people can stop after one or two glasses of wine. Is it very similar?
Well, the big difference is, you know, the closest addiction to compulsive gambling, from what they tell me and the research shows, is cocaine. But the real difference between the drugs that you put into your body and gambling addiction is there's no track marks, there's no dilated pupil, there's no smell. It's hidden and invisible. A classic case, I get a call on my hotline a couple of years ago. Lady says, my husband got arrested for compulsive gambling. He embezzled $600,000 from the insurance company he worked for. I said, how long are you married? She said, 30 years. I said, when did you know he had a problem? She said, when the FBI came and arrested him.
That's something. So yeah, there's a lot of hiding of it. It's just the addictive personality. Tony.
And Arnie, that's probably a good place to go. Let's talk about Craig Carton. I mean, a man with a radio career, a man with a family, a man who's well known through this tri-state area, and out of the blue does something that, you know, okay, maybe we didn't think the guy was an angel, but we didn't think he would do something like that. You know, fill us in, because we're at a loss.
Well, it's interesting because I remember when I was running the Council on Compulsive Gambling, he used to be on 101.5 FM in New Jersey. And I called up one day and wanted to talk about compulsive gambling, and he cut me off and said, I don't want to talk about that. But here's an interesting thing. On Tuesday morning, before he got arrested on Wednesday, I'm in the car with my wife, and Craig Carton's on WFAN radio, and he's talking about odds on football games, and talking about Atlantic City, and I said to my wife, you know, Sheila, he's a compulsive gambler. And the next morning, he got arrested.
It's absolutely incredible, and and let's talk about that for a second. I mean, I grew up in Stamford, Connecticut, where you could always find a football slip if you wanted one. But it was, small time kind of silly Billy stuff. And now it's anybody can find anything to bet on. The NFL, I mean, it's. Have they ever really made a position statement of gambling, or is this a large part of how the bread gets buttered and they ain't saying a thing?
Well, this is interesting because the NFL hired me to do a 2-day seminar in Atlanta, Georgia, and 2 days in Arizona. And on the second day in Arizona, ESPN came to me. I think it was Marsha Kramer, if I remember. She said, we'd like you to do an interview about gambling. And the NFL told me I couldn't do that. They didn't want me to talk to the media. And the next day when we did the last workshop, they were so nervous that they counted off everybody's name that was in there. They called the name and you had to stand up. They wanted to make sure they didn't have any media people in there.
Absolutely amazing. And I mean, we now have.
If you took away the gambling from the NFL, you would have soccer.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, now we have, quote unquote fantasy sports. And I mean, and I guess that's my other question. The fact that gambling now is so convenient. I mean, you live in a gambling state. We live in a gambling state. Anybody can go and gamble for entertainment. I mean, does this really make a situation of people who are kind of sitting on the borderline get a whole lot worse because it's just so darn easy to go to the casino and, not bet with your head, but bet over it?
Let's talk about the fantasy sports, because that's really going to be the big explosion. A state like New York says, we're not going to allow fantasy sports in. And then they work out a deal where they get 14.5% from the fantasy sports people. Now they make it legal and the state takes a piece of the action. We're seeing tons of young people, and the fantasy sports stuff is a lot of young people doing it. We see a lot of young people who are involved with fantasy sports coming now for help.
And it's just so darn convenient, and you could do it, lock the door of your room and gamble your head off. It's just, I mean, we were always taught, Bob and I talk about it a lot, that gambling was a bad thing, and if you did it, you did a little of it, and you did it for fun, and you had to watch yourself. And now it's like, casino here, fantasy sports there, and you're right, it's a big money driver.
If you turned around and you weren't a compulsive gambler and you had control, then it's no problem. But the people that have addiction to gambling, they're going to be destroying a lot of lives in the next couple of years with the fantasy and everything else. It's a real explosion. And New Jersey now wants to put in sports betting.
Yeah, and that
actually, it's in the Supreme Court now. They're waiting for a decision.
And your prediction on that, where do you think it's going to go, and what effect will it have on the state, and will other states follow?
Well, New Jersey took the real gamble by trying to put sports betting in when technically it's illegal in this country to have sports betting. You only have 3 states that are allowed to have it. In 1991, Bill Bradley was the senator in New Jersey and the U.S., and he put in a bill that allowed the casino industry and the states to have a 6-month window to try to put in sports betting, and nobody did it. So now they're trying to squeeze it through the Supreme Court. But technically, sports betting is legal in America. And it's interesting because when they put the sports betting bill through, somebody put an addendum into the bill that allowed fantasy sports to be legal.
It's absolutely incredible.
It's really exploding, like Arnie said. Again, we're on the phone with Arnie Wexler, again, a certified compulsive gambling counselor, and has done a lot of work in the sports area. So it's a fabulous. It's really an interesting discussion. So your prediction, Arnie, if a youngster is into fantasy football now, there's probably a good chance that he's going to get into more heavy gambling maybe 10, 15 years from now.
That's probably the case, but I'm not concerned if they're not addicted. But if they're addicted, those people are going to end up in trouble. The end game of addicted gambling is suicide or jail or killing themselves, to be honest with you. Because compulsive gamblers end up in jail with all kinds of stuff.
And Arnie, Tony and I have talked at length about some of the old college players and how point shaving back in the day was a big deal.
Yeah, NYU.
Ernie Cobb from Stanford,
Ernie
the
Cobb, Connie
NYU,
Hawkins.
Hot Rod Williams at LSU. Is this still a concern? I mean, how easy is it for, say, organized crime to get kids like this interested in something like this? We don't hear about it, obviously, as much as it used to be. Are these kids protected, or is it just not happening?
Who knows? Nobody really knows. But I could tell you that as soon as the line moves in a certain way in Vegas, they know what's going on.
Oh, boy.
And they take the game off the board, too.
So...
I mean, I was friendly, a lot of that stuff with the point shaving things years ago. I had a friend of mine that was a recovering gambler, that his job was to take the cash money from New York, get on an airplane, and go to Kentucky and deliver money to players.
All right, so...
And he ended up in jail because of it.
Yeah. Holy cow, isn't that
And the kids, of course, were innocent. Yeah, we're well familiar with those stories.
And you had mentioned, Arnie, Vegas, obviously, we think of gambling, we think of Vegas, but that's the hotbed as far as this country. How about other international cities, both here and abroad, that are maybe hotbeds of gambling that we're not as familiar with?
Well, you take a state like Oklahoma, or take a state like Mississippi or Louisiana. Today they're hotbeds for compulsive gamblers even there.
Wow.
It's easier today to place a bet than to buy a loaf of bread or a container of milk in a store.
That's so true, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, just look at the lotteries alone. When the lottery started, it was 30 numbers or 39 numbers. Now it's 75 numbers, and it's nationwide lottery and it's big jackpot. And then everybody starts to play. Even people that never play those big jackpot games.
Boy,
the states are making a fortune by robbing the money from the people.
I've seen it, yeah.
So true. Again, we have a few minutes left with Arnie, Tony.
And Arnie, we were talking before we went on, and, but the fascination for anybody in our era is Pete Rose. I mean, maybe the best baseball pure hitter that ever lived. Charlie Hustle always got his uniform dirty, and the man is betting on baseball. And what was his problem? Why did he do this?
Because it's very simple. He's an addicted gambler. I remember doing an interview years ago. I think actually it was with the it was the Orlando Sentinel. And they interviewed me about Pete Rose, and Pete Rose said, what the hell does he know about compulsive gambling? He's never been in jail. But Pete Rose makes a living today selling autographs in Las Vegas and then blows the money in Vegas every day.
Wow.
But Pete Rose is not the only sports guy. You got a lot of people in sports that are addicted gamblers.
I'm sure.
Now, do the leagues, when you were working with the NFL, do they take an active interest in players that might be betting on the outcome of a game, or maybe dropping a pass or blowing a kick or something, or, swinging at a strike three that's 2 feet over your head?
You would think they would have interest in that because they don't want the game tarnished.
Yeah.
But the fact is that they probably can't control all of that anyways. I mean, I've done training for the National Football League. And the NBA. And we've, the NBA thinks I'm the enemy.
Why is that?
Well, they don't want to hear about compulsive gambling issues, but Horace Balmer was the security guy for the NBA. And Horace hired me to speak in Virginia. It was probably 1997 or 8. And I went to Horace's office with my wife, and he wanted us to talk January 97 or 98 to speak to all the teams and all the players. And David Stern put a kibosh on it when it got to his table.
So it's
Look, you got Lenny Dykstra, who's probably a compulsive gambler.
Yeah.
You got Michael Jordan. You got Chet Forte. You got Art Schlichter. I mean, those are the ones that came public. But I, myself and my wife have treated a few of them that never came public between me and you.
Sure.
wow. And Arnie, you mentioned Tony and I talked at length also about Art Schlichter because he was a great football player back in the day when we were young, and we looked up to him. And you know, that's one of the sadder gambling stories. It went to drugs, it ruined his career, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure you've had so many stories like this. Can you share maybe a very similar one to Schlichter's story? I'm sure
Well,
you have.
let me share Schlichter's story first.
Sure.
In 1980, Dr. Robert Custer, who was my friend and was treating Schlichter, took me out to Long Island where Schlichter was in treatment for the first time. And we got there, and while we were talking to him, all of a sudden came the limo and they took him to a health club where he could do exercise. And Art Schlichter, I testified for him in 1995 in front of Judge Pro in Las Vegas when he embezzled money in Las Vegas. So I've been very friendly with Art from day one, all the way back to 1991, 1980.
What a story.
So I know his story very well.
And what was it with him? Was he just he just had the gambling itch and he just couldn't scratch it?
When he was 14 or 15, or when he was a teenager, one of the coaches in Ohio State took him to a racetrack, and it progressed from there.
Oh boy.
And Art Schlichter, one time he did a radio show in Las Vegas, and every time they took a break for commercials, he would go in the audience and borrow money from people.
Wow. It's really amazing.
He's in jail again right now.
Yeah, I know that. I understand.
Wow, he's been in and out. I know, Arnie. It's been what a sad story because again, remember him at Ohio State, such a talented guy, and
This guy could have been the governor of Ohio
yeah,
if he didn't have a gambling addiction.
yeah, he was that talented. And Arnie,
Good looking and bright and everything else.
Everything else.
oh, absolutely. And before we let you go, we want you to plug your book, All Bets Are Off. Tell us the impetus that went into writing that and what it's all about.
Well, I had a dream about 35 years ago to write a book.
Okay.
And I couldn't get anybody that wanted to publish it, and I couldn't get agents that could get the book done. And about 5 years ago, I was speaking in San Diego, and a guy heard me speak at a conference and then came over to me after and said he was a publisher, he wanted to do the book. We're now in the third printing, and almost every day I get emails and calls from people from all over the world. The book has been going crazy with people looking for help.
That's
And
tremendous. Tony, final
Thankfully,
question.
you're here to give it. And Arnie, you know, we're never going to get rid of all the casinos, all the football betting, all the slot machines and everything. But what can we do to have less problem gambling issues in this society?
It's not an issue of what you can do to have less problems. The issue is that the states are making money and nobody's really, you know, the biggest thing that happens, compulsive gamblers call me all the time looking for treatment. And when they want to go into treatment, they haven't got any more money, they're tapped out, or the family members have bailed them out for so much, they don't want to pay for treatment. So the truth is that alcoholics and drug addicts can get into treatment, but gamblers basically can't get into treatment, except for Gamblers Anonymous.
Again, it's just a fascinating story that transcends
It's chilling.
sports,
It's
and
absolutely
we
chilling.
could talk a lot more about it. But we appreciate your insight, Arnie. The website again, aswexler.com. The book, All Bets Are Off. And Arnie, we can't thank you enough for.
It's really been a pleasure,
It's
Arnie.
a tremendous subject, and we just thank you for your efforts and what you do to combat it.
If anybody wants to talk to me, please feel free to give me a call or an email.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd love to do it with you guys anytime.
Appreciate you being
Thank you.
here.
You know, and I know people are going to take you up on it, so don't get angry with me.
Okay.
I hope they do.
Good night,
Okay.
Arnie. Take
Good night,
care
Arnie.
now.
Thanks.
Take
Best
care.
to
Thanks
Sheila.
for everything,
Good night.
guys.
Anytime. Thank
Take
you, Arnie.
care. Bye.
Arnie Wexler, the
Wow.
expert on certified
I
compulsive
mean,
gambling.
we've
Tony.
been sitting here on this show, and we've always said, it's dirty, or this. I mean, tonight I feel like I have to take a shower. I never really realized how dirty it is.
Well, it's got
Wow.
bigger in monumental fashion in such a short time,
Yeah.
and that's I think that's very clear. And there's almost like there's no rules anymore, Tony.
Well,
and
it's-
that's why a guy like Arnie will always be busy, and it's sad in a way because he has many more stories he can share about people whose lives were ruined, and not just people, their families too. So, but again. If you have a problem out there, folks, reach out for help because according to Arnie, obviously it's an addiction and it's a major problem in this
As the old
country.
Italian man would say, sometimes dead presidents walk.
There you go.